Hi, I'm Eric Benz. You know me from various different projects over the years. My background is in payments and identity. So I've been in pay tech and mobile solutions for probably over a decade now, working with a number of different companies in the gaming space, as well as in the mobile wallet space. I'm a co-founder of Credits. I'm also the chief operations officer. So we've been quite involved at getting this thing to market for the past year now. Glad to be here. Thanks for coming today.
I'm Braine. I work for Barclays Investment Bank. I'm in the IB CTO office. So this is a technology group, and we provide a number of functions across the bank. But primarily within the investment bank, we provide an architecture and innovation service. So within architecture, we have a set of lead architects who review technologies that pass through the bank, whether they're candidate innovations or right the way up through to whether it's a major vendor. So obviously in the blockchain space, what we're doing is looking at opportunities that exist, new technologies that may come from major vendors, smaller vendors, ideas, potential standards. We look to evaluate those and see the opportunities that may exist. Also, the innovation area, we have a new innovation director who's looking at pulling in ideas for those in the architecture area to also explore and evaluate. It's been great over the last year or so being involved in, for example, the Barclays Accelerator, where we have companies, I think there are 3 in the current London cohort that are involved in some way in blockchains or Bitcoin. And we've provided some architecture review, where we may perform a deep dive into their offering to see, it's basically to kick the tires, look at everything from security to performance, this whole list of things, similar to what we would do for an internal project evaluation. And that degree of rigor, I think, is really useful in the enterprise space, where you can move from this idea of, here's all this potential, to actually, what are some of the challenges against that? So we heard in the first discussion, the obvious point of compliance and regulation. But in addition to that, the area that I'm particularly interested in are non-functional requirements. So some of the generic things that everybody is kind of aware of that large organizations need in place. But we have these technologies now that are very suitable, maybe with a lower bar of non-functional requirements. So one of the things I'll be thinking is if there are questions about that space, and the kind of things I'll talk about aren't things that are proprietary to Barclays or our IP or a special source. It's almost the opposite. It's us giving a technology challenge out to the industry and say, if you guys are innovating in this space, maybe you'll be able to work on some of these non-functional areas to come up with solutions that we could be interested in going forward. So that's my interest.
And so I thought we'd keep it quite loose in terms of the scheduling of things. I think what's important to note, obviously you heard Nick speak about credits, so if there's any other questions that you want to talk about afterwards, because we're very focused on the enterprise solutions right now. We see a lot of projects currently in the blockchain ecosystem. They're very focused on consumer-facing things such as wallets, exchanges, people that need Bitcoins for whatever reason that might be. So again, I think that it's important to kind of pull it back a little bit and really say, Credits is a built from scratch consensus protocol that really is in its own right, not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, not Ripple, not anything else. It's its own blockchain environment. And that's important to note because there are other blockchain plays going on right now, and it's something that you should be aware about. Whereas Bitcoin blockchain itself, whilst enterprise might be extremely interested because the buzz surrounding Bitcoin is quite high, I don't know about you, but I don't see any enterprise business ever plugging into Bitcoin blockchain when you can only do 2.7 transactions a second. Whereas Visa is currently doing hovering around 50,000 transactions a second, and that's just one example of many. So again, when you design software and protocol layer infrastructure for industry, as far as enterprise and various other verticals are concerned, speed, security, flexibility, and scalability are extremely essential and important. So with Nick and my background in gaming, we know this very well because obviously when gaming went online, we dealt with some of these very, very same issues. This actually emulates exactly where e-gaming was 13, 14 years ago because nobody wanted to provide financial services. Nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And there were only specific jurisdictions and areas that actually wanted to spend the time to create a regulatory framework to allow businesses to actually operate. So in that sense, credits has been specifically designed to meet the enterprise needs of this blockchain environment that's currently in existence.
Can I ask you guys to do one thing?
Sure.
I know it's a complex subject, but
Sure,
I'll
yeah.
probably ask it several times because it's something that sort of needs to. But if you can explain the difference between, well, first of all, explain your interpretation of blockchain and the separation between Bitcoin. Just as a step back, because as soon as we start to get into the enterprise side, we're going to use.
Who likes cars? Everybody likes cars, right? Everybody knows what a car is. Who knows what a Model A car is? Everybody, right? First car brought the world together. Everybody could afford one. So Bitcoin is a Model A car, right? It's the first to market. Everybody bought one. Cars today and the Model A uses what we call an internal combustion engine, correct? We still have it, but we don't drive the Model A. We like Bentleys, we like Ferraris, we like new, we like fast, we like speed. So if you take Bitcoin and you separate it from the underlying technology, which is blockchain, the internal combustion engine, you realize that this is just one app of millions to come, right? So separate Bitcoin as an app, just like email is an app to the internet protocol, for example, okay? And there will be millions of apps being built on blockchain. Now, there are different blockchains, like I mentioned, so whether it's a Bitcoin blockchain or another blockchain, it really depends on the specific use cases for the different businesses, whether they be enterprise or independent or what have you. And as far as blockchain is concerned, this is not a new concept. Blockchain is just a sexy dress put on a distributed ledger. So it is a distributed ledger, which has happened to be coined blockchain, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure. So I can give my view. So I would almost take a step back and say, where would we be looking at this in maybe 30 years from now? So there'll be a design space. It'll have multiple dimensions on it. So what would that look like? Okay, so it may have some aspects which are around cryptocurrency. It may have some other aspects which are almost orthogonal, independent of that. And that may be more around data management. And so what we'd be looking to do, to answer your point, is identify 2 points in that multi-dimensional design space, one of which is Bitcoin, and another one is this idea of blockchain, which may actually not be a point, but more of a shape within this design space. And within that, as time goes on, the startups and the major organizations are identifying different points in this design space and fleshing it out. You can imagine that if you had a slider, you could do it from 8 years ago to 30 years in the future, and it would start blank, and then we start seeing different points of it populated. Some of it will be concepts, others will be names of particular technologies or cryptocurrencies. Other things may be things that maybe aren't blockchain based, but actually achieve the same results that an enterprise may want. So it's taking inspiration from it. Then you can imagine other aspects where you're saying, what we're doing is we've looked at Bitcoin and said, well, actually, what's the special source? And then maybe elicited some enterprise aspects that are more related to certain non-functional requirements around trustless or maybe cost saving, to identify a new point in that space, which may be just blockchain separate. And then so it goes on. And wouldn't it be nice if we could fast forward that slider to look at not just the design space, but the taxonomy that you've got at the end of it. And imagine that structure all broken down with the pros and cons of cryptocurrencies and different kinds of blockchains, proof of stake that was just mentioned, proof of work, different kinds of proof of stake, solving different kinds of technological and algorithmic challenges. Certain things having constraints, which would mean inevitably there is no algorithmic solution around certain issues. Okay, so maybe that avenue is good for a certain suite of use cases, maybe in a corporate bank, for example. Maybe in another area where you may have higher non-functional requirements around latency and so on, but it needs other angles brought into this. So I wouldn't view it as a Bitcoin blockchain. I view it as a huge design space slowly being filled out over time. And a number of people looking at this for inspiration and saying, well, actually, we want the sweet spot as an investment bank, which is here. We want all these non-functional requirements, and we want all these cost-saving benefits. But nobody knows what that is yet. So it's almost like a hill-climbing algorithm. We know it exists somewhere, but we don't know how to get there. So we're looking for inspiration in startups and vendors to help come up with new ideas to guide us where that is. And I personally find that really interesting. When there's a company that comes on and says, hey, here's this new idea, it solves this one problem. Great, we're getting closer. Or they'll solve that one problem. It's like a rubber mat. You push down on the air bubble and something else pops up. There's no free lunch. I find it almost like an interesting intellectual challenge of how to get there. It's both architecture, underlying technologies, maturity. It's quite unusual, it's exciting. It's like being back in the original days when the internet was kicking off and you're looking for various protocols to be set up. So that's my view of Bitcoin blockchain.
So, question, I know this is quite close to the heart. You talk sort of around non-functional requirements there, and something that commonly comes up in this space is a solution searching for a problem. Do you think that that's part of the obstacle to the adoption of this technology, especially within enterprise? Because you either have one end of the spectrum where it's a solution for everything, or it's a solution for something which can't identify it.
Indeed. So if we think often that a bank and many other large organizations take, so when it's coming to the enterprise products, they'll have a suite of, for example, service level agreements that need to be in place. They'll have a set of non-functional requirements, a set of regulatory requirements, and then go evaluating various products from vendors in order to satisfy those requirements. In the blockchain space, it's almost the opposite. People are coming with actual, either deliverable solutions, or here is a vision that we've got, we just need to implement the final version. And then, how does that fit in with your requirements and non-functional requirements? And then the mismatch format is where it gets interesting. So they're able to say, well, actually, if you look more down this route or more look down that route, it will achieve the end result. So my ask of the community is almost, bear in mind banking's non-functional requirements. So if you're aiming to sell to an investment bank, try and aim for large scale, industrial scale, security, reliability, etc. You need low latency. You can't have a solution where it's, oh, within an hour and a half it will get to a certain point. It would be better to come up with non-functional requirements baked in at the beginning. Then your engagement with people that are evaluating those products could be around the same level. It makes an easier discussion for your propositions.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, this is exactly why we've created the underlying layer with everything baked into the core. I mean, all these different needs and use case potentials that people might have, whilst, doing something specific for, a bank or whatever is great. Having the framework that allows other people to take advantage of the toolkits or the SDKs to then create their own use cases to switch out their underlying infrastructure, because at the end of the day, the consumers and the people, they don't need anything different. We've got too much choice, and it's about the cost-cutting exercises that are really needed in industry as far as clearing, as far as payments in general, as far as identity management, etc. So a lot of these areas, and this is exactly why we have no scripting language. We have various agnostic frameworks that allow people to plug and play almost in order to achieve these scenarios. So yeah, I mean, there is so much friction that's been built and built and built. So we feel that the best way of getting in there from the ground up is to offer those toolkits which others can take advantage of.
It's probably worth mentioning the opportunity here. So there are often quoted figures of potential cost saving billions in multiple different use cases in this area across banking. So it's really huge amounts of money that can be saved. So you need the opportunity there together with the technology to meet that opportunity. But we just need to fill that gap of technologies that are industrial strength.
So Lee, on that point, you said there are huge amounts of costs that can be saved for banks. Talk about why that is. So everybody says, oh, it's cost saving, right? Or if you're in the emerging market space, it's, oh, this is going to financially include billions of people. Why are people excited by that?
Sure. So in this case, if you explore back office functions, if you explore central counterparty, if you explore clearing houses, you'll see the amount of duplication that's performed for any action to go through to this finality. It's a huge amount of IT and people effort in that space. So the cost saving there is the traditional which every organisation looks at as part of its lean programs, its cost savings, in order to remain efficient and competitive. So you can look at, for example, consolidation of IT systems. So if you look at, for example, clearing houses in Eurobonds as one example, so there are many large organisations in that space. If you look at payments, where you have organisations, in each bank they have their own payment system that receive files, do some munging of that, send it back as central entity. So there's a lot of infrastructure there, whether it's a hub and spokes model and various other topologies. There's opportunity to radically transform and simplify that. So the CIOs of a number of banks, it's for us an aspiration to be able to achieve that. Regulators, Bank of England, have asked the banks to explore that in terms of not just the cost-saving opportunity, but the ripple effect of that. So the costs passed on to consumers and corporates will then be lowered. So there's benefit, not just to the banks, but to the whole of society, industry, etc., from providing simplification here. Remove friction, make it more of a utility. So the service that we provide should be more of a utility where it actually doesn't require a value add, for example, of a relationship manager, etc. So that's a stated public aspiration. And I could talk for hours on that. Next question, thanks.
Anthony mentioned about it often being a solution looking for a problem, and you've identified a few key areas there. Do you find that you're often trying to convince people they have a problem that needs solving, or are they actually coming to you and saying, you can help us out?
Yeah, indeed. So for many of the propositions that come our way, they're very interesting. So they're innovative, it moves the industry along a certain step. So it solves, what they solve is the problem that they've set out to solve. From our perspective, we're often being quite tough and saying, well, actually, we need you to solve these other problems as well. So this point of a solution coming to us, yes, indeed, there is a solution, and it may solve what we're looking for, but it doesn't solve the entire set. Now, if you think of other topics in the space, you may look at a major database vendor and say, yeah, but you don't solve this problem to do with that. Oh, then you bring in another vendor and a tool, and you pull together a set of third parties that together solve all the problems you need. What's interesting here is a lot of the players aren't necessarily working together. There's smaller startups that are taking an idea, solving that one problem. And maybe actually there needs an element of considering all of these things being brought together to make a cohesive picture that is then a good proposition. At the moment, many large enterprises are almost taking it the other side. They are themselves having to work this out. So a startup will come in and say, here is our solution to this problem. Well, we're not looking at the rest of it. It's up to you guys to sort it out, which is why it's taking months to think this through and to pull together a space of what different people are offering and what are the challenges. It's really exciting.
It's become obvious, though, I mean, just being really simplified about it, we all have problems. The problem is we all become very complacent and we just accept the fact that we automatically are fine with 3%, no matter what. We accept the fact that we have those costs and we just deal with it and we don't even want to think about it, and because the system has been established the way it is, all the scar tissue has been built up over time, we as consumers taking financial services or whatever we do to meet 3%, we're fine. So maybe it's a little less, maybe it's a little more, but on average that's kind of what it is. So, there are problems that are being tackled in various different aspects. Now, if the banks want to keep the doors open, if they want to continue to innovate, they want to continue to save costs so that everybody will be happy, whilst that's a good ambition, the notion of running that on Bitcoin blockchain, which actually costs more to operate than Swift, seems a little strange to me. So I think that there's a lot more exploratory elements around kind of choosing the right infrastructure. And I keep saying this word infrastructure because infrastructure is what's key here. Infrastructure is what powers various different industries, whether it's financial services or not. Infrastructure is absolutely essential, and this is the first time ever, where you have an infrastructure that literally is able to plug into financial services, identity, payments, security. I mean, it's a bit of a unicorn, to be honest with you. And us trying to understand what this unicorn is and how we can breed this unicorn is really where we're at, I think, right now.
Breeding the unicorn.
Right.
I have a little bit of a broader question. So the thing with blockchain is that it essentially is an intermediary for a lot of people. So a lot of the third-party intermediaries are going to essentially not be very informed, which will result ultimately in huge job losses. Do you think that that will be a problem in adopting blockchain technologies? And to what extent do you think we can overcome that problem and actually explain to people the benefits in the creation of technology?
Cheaper, faster, better post office scenario when email came about. It will be a painful process for some, but those that don't want to adopt or innovate and they want to stay in their legacy antiquated mindsets of doing business and operating, then they'll be extinct or over time become extinct if they don't want to accept the fact that this is a new area, this is a new technology in which they need to apply to their underlying service offerings. So yeah, it'll be a painful process. Everybody has their own agenda. Every investor has their own agenda. Every enterprise has their own agenda. So at the end of the day, there are a lot of agendas that are out there. So it will be a long process, but I think this is moving a lot faster than the internet did. Exponentially, so we'll see a change a lot quicker than what we've already experienced.
I think in general terms, what you're saying is there's a value chain. There'll be some disruption to that. So what I would say is people need to identify where they can add value in that. So some intermediaries, relationship managers, etc., will just leverage the blockchain, whatever the blockchain or similar may be in that case. I think the challenge is if you are the point of friction and you're not adding value and you're just taking cost and, then there may be a little bit of a challenge. And I think the point there is that's the opportunity at that point for somebody to come in and disrupt. But there's also going to be huge opportunities for people to add value into that new disruption. And so I'll focus on the adding, where to add the value in that huge chain. Value blockchain. Value chain.
We'll do one more question and then we'll meet.
So the blockchain can be used in other applications, not just in the finance sector, as you mentioned, like Royal Mills and gaming. Any other sectors?
I'm very passionate about identity management because that's my background, but identity management has been a huge friction-filled space for decades now, and we're still, if I go to Barclays to open a bank account, personal, not an exchange. If I go to Barclays to open a bank account, then I need to submit specific documents in order to do so. Now, if I'm a migrant worker, I don't have documents. So we operate on this legacy, antiquated KYC system that was established in the 70s. So the drop-off rate and the onboarding process and the way in which we do know your customer and know your business services today doesn't match to the digital environment that we're currently in. And for the past decade or two, a lot of the Experian, Equifax, the 192s, the W2s, the Jumios, the ID checker, everybody has been after this federated KYC model to where you open an account with Barclays. Well, if I want to open one at Halifax, I should be able to do so by just accepting the button, because my details are there. I'm a good person, pay my bills, and at the end of the day, this is the problem. There's so much friction built up because everything is siloed. Everything is siloed. Every bank is siloed. Imagine just doing a blockchain for all the banks in the UK, running a blockchain on Voca, for example. Well, then you immediately take out DHL, UPS, and FedEx to where you don't have to send paperwork. I mean, imagine just paper trail in general, right? All these silos that have been built up, all these third-party institutions and various different providers deal with paper. That's what they do. They deal with paper. And then the banks and every other institution and KYC companies or whoever have to pay to deal with that paper.
How about the finance paper documents transmission?
Oh man, it's costly. It's legacy in terms of storing it, for example. Imagine, you know what's under the streets of London? Documents. Tunnels and tunnels of documents, which is really exciting, actually. It's cool.
If you want to make it more generic, what you've actually got is a worm drive. So something where you can write once and read many. So it's a ledger. So you enter individual rows in your ledger and you stack them up. The content of those rows don't have to be financial. So when you say what are the potential applications, anything that needs a worm drive, which is pretty broad.
So like land registry or anything where you need something that you can be sure there's been no collusion, nobody's attacked it, nobody's changed it, there's been no fraud.
Exactly. The only challenge on top of that, and I'm assuming some people know a lot more than me about this from a legal perspective, is the entity that will sit on that to guarantee it. So you've got an entry in a ledger that used to say that entry is legally binding and submissible to court. So that's a challenge for the lawyers in the coming years to sort out.
And you'll have different trusted providers on your blockchain solutions where you will be able to then choose those entities in which you want to establish that trust with. As far as we see it, and that's kind of how we see working with the government provides a lot of benefits in that aspect.
I think it's almost like, here's a relational database idea. What do you think we could use it for? Right.
Cool.